III, Vladimir Putin reactivates Soviet military bases in Cuba, sparking Cold War II fears. Russia is reactivating a Soviet-era signals intelligence base in Cuba, and experts think even more could open to increase its surveillance on the U.S. Concern has been raised among the West that the plans are Russian retaliation after the U.S. announced it was pulling out of the Bilateral Intermediate-Range Nuclear Forces (INF) treaty. According to the Jamestown Foundation, a Washington, D.C.-based institute for research and analysis, founded in 1984 as a platform to support Soviet defectors, the reopening of the base would duplicate rather than significantly add to Russian abilities to monitor U.S. activities in the Caribbean. But the think tank warns, if the Kremlin leader should decide to establish additional bases in Cuba, as some Russian commentators are now suggesting, that would be a different matter altogether, particularly if he succeeds in this goal. The move by Russian President Vladimir Putin comes with strengthening ties between Moscow and Havana. Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel met with Putin in Moscow and said he wanted to give a new impulse to bilateral relations. The leaders discussed matters such as healthcare and tourism, but also military cooperation as well. The Jamestown Foundation added, this led to speculation in both Russia and the West that this meant Moscow was about to reopen the lurid monitoring site that it closed 16 years ago, and possibly open additional bases on the island as well. This was coupled with Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov, who oversees Russia's military-industrial complex and military-technical relations with foreign countries, visiting Cuba. The two countries agreed on contracts worth more than $265 million in the military sphere alone, according to Russian paper Nezavismaya Gazeta. Russian military expert who served in Cuba in the 1980s, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Ovchinnikov, said the deepening of cooperation between Moscow and Havana was entirely expected. He added it is especially so given U.S. President Donald Trump's threat to leave the INF treaty. But he stressed that the Kremlin may not have the resources to develop any major military bases in Cuba. The 1987 INF treaty means neither Russia nor the U.S. is allowed to build ground-launched ballistic and cruise missiles with ranges of 500 to 5,500 kilometers, 310 to 3,417 miles. But the U.S. claims Russia has been violating the deal by building a new cruise missile. And now it looks like the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty, INF, is kaput, sparking fears of a new arms race between the superpowers. The location of Putin opening bases on Cuba is especially alarming over the memory of the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, in which the USSR was caught trying to ship nuclear missiles to Cuba, which is only 780 kilometers, 484 miles, from mainland America. The incident is generally considered to be one of the most major crises in the Cold War and the closest that the two superpowers came to all-out nuclear war.
Connected.Don't.